Okay, we are live. I'll send the link later. So good morning, everyone in this side of the oceans, and good evening, the people back home. Welcome to another topic today. We are going to discuss the topic of codependency. And as usual, we will start with our our Hotuba mate. So Saya, you're up.
Dear Pastor, I must confess I didn't listen to your sermon today. Yeah, and before you judge me, I was distracted. It began shortly after the announcement, and especially about the wedding. The wedding, you all know, that got the whole church excited about the prospect of two of their very own coming together. It sounds like a match made in heaven. It's Conrad, or we just call him Co, and then there is Diana, we just call her D. And it looks like a match made in heaven, and I know it sounded like formality when you said if anyone has any objection, let them raise it with the pastor before the due date. And I do have an objection. And frankly, after that announcement and every other thing that was said and done just passed like a blur, I must confess, Pastor, I didn't listen to the sermon today. You see, I had several meetings with myself right there in the pew because the objections I have against this proposed union cannot be able to stand against the scrutiny of Scripture. I don't even have a Bible verse that substantiates what I'm about to tell you, but I know it. I've seen it, not just in Conrad and D, but I've seen it in many more. You see, it doesn't just have to be in the Bible for it to be wrong, but I know it and it's real. Yeah, I know D is the quiet, reserved type. She's harmless and almost sits in the corner, and Conrad is everyone's dream. He's out there, he's bold, he's pleasing everyone, he's entertaining, he's forefront of the drill, he's religious, he's really spiritual. But Pastor, there's just something wrong. See, I have grown with them. I've grown really around them. I have seen them grow. I do know both of them are medicating something. I know they have experienced trauma, and yes, there is no church regulation that prevents people who've experienced trauma from getting into union, but give me a hearing. You see, they have all developed their outward personalities to cope with their internal problems. Their parents have put them on the straight and the narrow, and to get their obedience have advanced a theology of fear and intimidation. And the children, because their needs have been suppressed and because their needs have been sidelined and because they have been abandoned for long, this external behavior you see, Pastor, is not obedience, it's not character, it's compliance. It is the external response to internal trauma that has deep-seated and long been nursed and hatched. And you see Conrad marching, it's him trying to perform, it's him calling out for love, it's him trying to make sure that he's okay, that nothing will break under his watch, that no one will be displeased because of him. I know it. I've seen him as his teacher, I've seen him as his instructor, I've seen him doing it in school. And you see Diana's top performance in school, and you see her withdrawing from everything. It's her trying to shrink and to become invisible. And for her, education is not just a key to career, it's her key out of home. Both of them are like a volcano, deep-seated things, putting down and suppressing it in. And I fear, Pastor, I fear that should you forge on with this match made in heaven and put them together, you will be forging nothing more but a union between two internally bleeding individuals to be put together, and they will perpetuate the cycle that has been there. This is not a union of love. This is a codependency. This is people who want to perform to each other, and one will do everything to make sure the other doesn't go away, and the other will try fix the other so that they're never going to be abandoned. This is not a union of love. This is a perpetuation of that cycle, that sickening cycle of codependency. I know you don't bet, Pastor, but I could put my liver on the plate and say it'll be a matter of months after the union, and they'll be right back in the office to do patchwork, or maybe separate, or maybe divorce. But who knows? Who knows, by that time they'll be coming back to your office. Maybe there will be already offspring to be taken care of. There will be children reintroduced into this cycle that we could stop now. If we could slow them long enough, counsel them deep enough, question them thoroughly enough to begin realizing, not only in this union, but in every other facet of their life, they have been codependent. They are simply a dance of hurt individuals trying to lean on other things, their workmates, their religion, their proposed marriage, and that needs to stop because they are bleeding on everything. They're bleeding on each other, and it is not helping them. Pastor, don't pass me the offering plate. Don't give me an altar call. I don't know which theology to stand on, but I didn't listen to your sermon. Because it's not just Conrad and D. It's many others who are in this codependence, and you need to stop it. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Saya. Thank you for taking us through that. And as we said, you need to do small TikToks and put all these things there so that we can always refer back to them. Yes, Shangwe na Vigelegele. Joanne, I'm sorry. We'll always be saying Joanne, I'm sorry. So let's start with Austin. I want us to start from this is our 844 hat on. I want us to start from definition. And since codependent has a root word, the etymology, can we start with dependent, codependent, independent, anything dependent, and then we soldier on. So Austin, you're up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Unfortunately, some of us were not good 844 students, but I will try. So normally when you talk about codependency, I like to look at it from the point of view of relationships and also from the point of view of addictions. Having worked in addiction treatment before, and we worked with families. So a lot of times, one of the things I have found with clients or family members who presented with the signs of codependency is that they seemed to overfunction in someone else's life and underfunctioned in their own. And what happened is that it's like they were centering the other person's life and then not really taking care of themselves. So you'll find it's like you are obsessed, you have actions, you have behaviors that are centered on someone else at the expense of your own. So in the sense, this is a type of a relationship that people get into or they build. The other thing also I found is that the codependent clients often chose relationships with other person's needs. Sometimes they felt like they needed to rescue the other person and making themselves indispensable as they related with the other person. So at times you'll hear counselors or social workers who are working with clients and they will hear a client say, I don't understand why she refuses to change. I have done everything for her. So you'll hear one client saying like that. The other one would say, helping someone who doesn't want help is an exercise in futility, but what are you supposed to do if you don't help them? So in the context of addiction, you would find you'll be hearing such statements that this person is helpless, they don't want help, but at the same time, they are busy providing them with help because we're feeling that indispensability. So often when I compare the codependent relationship with addiction, there are certain concepts that we borrow from addiction. Number one is tolerance. For example, if I take 1 mug of beer today and it's my first time, it might give me a certain type of effect. But if I keep taking 1 mug of beer every day, at some point what will happen is that the first time I got that high, which will be lower compared to the other time, the subsequent times. And at the same time now in codependency, you would find the codependent relationships, there's some element of tolerance. As time passes by, the codependence identity becomes increasingly defined by the relationship with the other person. So it's like I'm losing my identity, I'm losing my independence, and I'm more into the other person's identity. Then the other concept that we borrow from addiction as we look at codependency is the concept of withdrawal. We know that when people are addicted to substances and they don't get the substance, or they don't get their alcohol or their drugs, their bodies or their minds react in certain way. So you'll find you start getting either physical or psychological symptoms because of the substance not being there. And in the same way with codependent relationships, we also get like when the person is apart or unable to control the other person, the codependent experiences extreme anxiety or depressed mood. So it's like now they're having these withdrawal symptoms from their loved one who's now making them to be codependent. So what happens is that as we listen to the clients, we realize that some of them are hypervigilant to other people's behaviors. They are obsessed about what they are doing or what they are not doing. They will spend a lot of time trying to fix or trying to rescue the other person. They get exhausted about taking care of the other person, but they cannot stop because they rely on the other person to tell them when to stop. So of course, the behavior here is that the individual is spending more time thinking about, engaging in, or recovering from the behavior that they have with their codependent partner. The other thing also that we have found is that when I relate it with addiction, so the addict, you'll find maybe has their drug of choice, which is like a substance, cocaine, alcohol, heroin. For the codependent person, the relationship is their drug of choice, the relationship with this person. Having that person in their life makes them feel okay or feel whole, and the relationship takes the space of self-love. So, of course, sometimes people have asked me when I say that, what do you exactly mean when we say over-functioning in someone else's life and under-functioning in your own? There are certain things that we like to do that are socially acceptable. One is giving. It is socially acceptable to give. Giving money or giving compliments or giving resources. So it's socially acceptable to give. So that is one of the behaviors that we like, that is socially acceptable. Fixing. When our family members have problems, we try to help them to fix those problems. Or at our workplaces, if there are problems, we try to fix those problems. Again, it is socially acceptable to do that. The other behavior is about caregiving or caretaking. Your loved one is sick or your loved one is in need, you start to take care of them, and it is socially acceptable. Helping, serving, thinking about others, speaking for others, taking over, controlling, and then doing for the other person what they need to do for themselves. So you'll find now, when you say I'm over-functioning in someone else's life, it's like I'm carrying these behaviors too far. And what happens is that now I have no limits of my fixing, I have no limits of my giving, I have no limits of my speaking for them or thinking for them. And initially, the intention maybe is to be helpful, but then in the long run, it becomes hurtful because there is no healthy development in our relationship with the other person. So that is what I usually mean by overfixing or overfunctioning in someone else's life. Now, in terms of underfunctioning in your own life may include things like self-neglect, including neglecting your own health, neglecting your finances, your relationships, your work, failing to consider yourself in decisions and planning, development of physical and psychological problems, and then, of course, development of ethical and legal problems. I remember a client was telling me that she is saved and she is very religious, but she's married to the alcoholic man, and she has to call the employer to lie to the employer, you know, that leo akona malaria, or leo akona food poisoning, and it is because the man is having withdrawal symptoms and he cannot report to work. So you find for herself, she was like, I'm developing ethical problems now because I am lying, I am misrepresenting. So of course, now we had to discuss in terms of what limits is she not keeping as she does all these things. And we realized that it was limiting her growth. It was keeping her from being capable and responsible. And also, she realized that in as much as the intention was to be helpful, it was actually hurting her own self-development. So for me, that's how I like to look at codependency, that codependency can cause us to lose our sense of self in someone else. I hope I have passed your 844 grade, Posa.
See me. And we did school in this trauma. See me. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So talking about, I know Sarah set the point very well set us very well with the relationship bit, and this is Jacinta's foray. And talking about under-functioning and under and over-functioning in people's and your own lives. Just tell us from the perspective of relationship as the relationship person, what are you seeing? And if you need to add anything to what Austin said. Kizungu Meisha.
I keep forgetting that I muted myself. Good morning, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jacinta. I'm a self-love and relationship coach, and I mostly coach women over the last number of years, almost 4 years now. I've coached hundreds of women, and I can tell you this topic of codependency is deeply rooted. It's something that I see on a regular basis. I myself am a recovering codependent, and it is one of the very first topics we cover in my classes, because I'll talk about women because they're the ones I deal with the most. They say over 80% of women have some level of codependency, and that this has to do with the socialization of the girl child. A lot of it has to do with childhood experiences. It's a coping mechanism that we take on from childhood. So it's something that I have worked on myself for the last few years, and I still catch myself when I'm leaning into my codependency, but I recognize that's what that is. But in a nutshell, like Austin said, self-love is really a disconnection from the authentic self. And the best description I like to use is by Dr. Ross Rosenberg. He's the author of the book, The Human Magnet Syndrome. It's a book that talks about the dance between codependents and narcissists. And he describes codependence as self-love deficiency. So I think that's the best description I've seen, because it captures what codependency is true sense, loss of sense of self, but yet keenly tuned into the needs of other people, and pouring all your energies onto other people's needs while neglecting your own needs, and while neglecting self-abandoning. So codependency is really at the root of it is self-abandonment. And it's an individual disorder that is only expressed in relationships, and it's a dysfunctional coping mechanism. It is an attempt to win love and acceptance and validation, and even an attempt to control others. So people who are codependent might describe themselves as people pleasers. They have a Jesus complex or a savior rescuer complex. They will abandon their boundaries, or they tend to have no boundaries whatsoever. And they have a very unhealthy relationship with the want no. So they will continually say yes to things, even when everything their intuitive self is telling them the answer should be no. And more importantly, in relationships, they tend to self-abandon a lot, and almost take on the responsibility of carrying their partner's emotions, their partner's dysfunctions, covering up for them, as Austin just described, and almost to no reciprocation. So you find codependents who habitually find themselves in relationships with under-functioning people, addicted people, self-centered individuals, egotistical people, addicts, narcissists. First of all, codependents are like a magnet for people with narcissistic tendencies. But at the same time, also in our codependency, we can be very manipulative. Sometimes we can use emotional bullying. We suffocate others. We obsess over our partners. We take on full-grown human beings and make them our surrogate children. So you might find somebody who is a codependent might take on their full-grown siblings, and they are taking care of them. They are taking care of their children, paying their children's school fees, being the ones who take over their addictions, like putting them in rehab even when they are not ready to be put in rehab, and just really saving other people from themselves. But at the same time, codependents will consistently feel disrespected, undervalued. They will be very resentful. They will feel powerless, and they will often complain to everyone who can listen about the inequalities that they are experiencing in this dynamic, whether that is a romantic relationship or a relationship with a family member or even their friends. So that's how codependency manifests itself, and this is actually learned behavior. It's conditioned behavior. So the only way to heal codependency is actually unlearn the behavior. And one of the easiest ways to unlearn that is actually start understanding the power of boundaries and how to set boundaries. And then obviously doing the self-love work, which is starting to go inward and understand your own dysfunctions, and kind of shelving the need to fix and save others, and come back inward to not only love yourself, but also to understand your own dysfunctional way of being. And it's really a journey of homecoming that has to happen. So and that's where I start all my classes, because again, in fixing others, we are also self-destructing. So codependents will occupy themselves with busyness. You will find them, they are running around like chicken with no heads. They've signed up to be the chairwoman. They are the chairwoman of the PTA. They are volunteering in church. They are cooking pilau for this wedding and that baby shower. They are constantly running, but it's also because they are distracting from themselves as well.
My goodness, isn't that all of us? I'm just wondering if I'm.
So
Oh, it's all of us. Okay. So, is there a point where two codependents ever meet, or it's usually the relationship is codependent narcissist?
So usually when two codependents, there are two people, two codependents can be in a relationship, not for very long, but where you see it more, or where I've seen it, is where a codependent attaches themselves. They may think they're in love, but it's at the end of the day, it's attachment, right? They attach themselves to somebody who is the taker. So a codependent is naturally a giver. So they tend to be like magnets for people who are takers. This is why even if you read the human magnet syndrome, the codependent tends to be very attractive to somebody who has narcissistic or very selfish, egotistical tendencies, because that person is a taker and the codependent is a giver. So a codependent has an abundance of, they run with empathy, but they call themselves empaths. They're not empaths, they are codependents. Egotistical, narcissistic kind of a person is lacking in that, in empathy. They are selfish. They only give with an intention. So they don't give authentically, and even when they are giving you with an agenda. See, the codependent is, they give to their own detriment. This is why they tend to be so attractive to these selfish or even people who cannot function for themselves, because that polarity exists and it keeps the relationship going.
Okay. So, say you're up. I'm just wondering, then what's the difference between codependency, or is black tax just a big part of, is just codependence in another dress? And while you're at it, because I know you're gonna hop off, in the religious circle, what's the difference between bearing one another's burdens and codependency? Two questions.
Okay, so it's like you've set for me an exam for CRE and physics at a go. So is black tax? Yes, it can be a manifestation of codependency, and I like the way the two previous speakers have put it. The dance between the narcissist and the codependent manifests itself brilliantly, or black tax can be a very interesting place for this to do, because there are takers. Black tax has givers and takers, and many of the takers can be very selfish, okay? Or in their bid to ask for money will do a lot of guilt tripping, they'll do a lot of gaslighting, they'll do a lot of arm twisting. That's why you hear all that language for "I carried you when you were a baby, I carried you in my womb." So somehow you have to, you were born and now you begin realizing, wait, this womb was a rental. I need to somehow pay for it. So it's generally we use the term narcissist in a very negative way. You can become narcissistic unknowingly, like you're not even aware about it. And so in black tax, there's a lot of what has been normalized by culture and normalized by just general everyday society that breeds a lot of selfishness. Okay, children are forced to take on very adult responsibilities, or individuals are putting out a lot of money to pacify the guilt, or pacify being talked about badly, or pacify the fear of being cast because they did not take care of relative X or relative Y. So is all black tax codependency? No, not necessarily. Some of it is just you taking care of your responsibility. But can black tax be a part or a subset of codependency? Certainly, yes, because it has givers and it does have takers. And so I've spoken more on the takers, but the givers in the black tax equation can become or easily can do it to the neglect of themselves, or some are trying to use it to buy the peace or to make up for what they feel is not, or you hear a lot of language of givers referring to unresolved or unsorted out trauma. So in the black tax equation, you hear individuals building houses they really don't need, either the size or the magnitude. But when you hear what they're really trying to do is they're trying to use their money to run away from an unresolved past. So all of that scenario can result into a lot of black tax. And I know we did a whole session on black tax, and in the intervening months, I've realized there's a significant black tax that is also religious imposed. You find in various denominations, individuals of faith reaching out to people and saying things like, it's your parents' prayers and your parents' tithing that helps, and now they're not able to give, so you need to kind of give, which keeps fostering the idea that this God needs to be bribed. So God needs to be bribed so that he doesn't curse you, or that you may continue receiving blessings. And so by so doing, many individuals keep shunting money in that. I think, so yes, black tax and codependency. The difference or the balance between bearing one another's burdens, for those who are not religiously predisposed, it's an instruction lifted straight from the words of Paul, who says, we need to bear each other's burdens. So the relationship between bearing each other's burdens, drawing the line between bearing each other's burdens and codependency, is the result. When in codependency, it is two traumatized individuals who are hooked on each other. Okay, hooked in the sense, one is hooked in, I'm trying to always be a fixer, a helper, I'm there. And there's the taker who's always just, the narcissist, who everything is centering about themselves. So those individuals, the giver and the taker, cannot be bearing each other's burdens. The biblical idea of bearing each other's burdens is empowering you to be able to stand under your burdens. I am helping you relieve the load so that you can be on your feet. And then after that, you're able to go on with your journey. That's a biblical idea. The two examples that show what is called bearing each other's burdens in practice is there's an Exodus story about war, I think with the Amalekites and the Israelites, where Moses has to go up the hill and lift up his hands. And as long as his hands and staff were up, Israel was prevailing. And when his hand and staff were down, Israel was on the receiving end. So quickly what was done is a stone was found and put, and Moses was able to sit, and Aaron lifted one hand, and Hur lifted the other hand. And they did this until the battle was done. You notice a few things with that idea of bearing each other's burdens. Moses lifted the stick for a while until he exhausted his strength. So it wasn't a case of learned helplessness, or it wasn't a case of him just asking for his hands to be lifted. He did what he could first. And secondly, only when he got tired is when he got assistance to help him. And it was done for a season until the war was done. And when the war was done, we don't read in the rest of scripture Moses walking around with his hands being lifted up. So he had a burden, and he just needed help to go through a certain season, achieve a certain result, and then from there on he was helped. He was let go on his own. A second one is Easter is around the corner. It's the case of Jesus. Jesus is, when you read the list of things he goes through between Thursday night and Friday when he's carrying the cross, it's a lot. He's sweated blood, which is a man under distress. He's gotten all that Roman weeping, so he's really bled and stuff. And on top of that, the cross is put on him, and he collapses under its weight. it becomes too much. But a guy, Simon of Cyrene, is basically force compelled to help him bear under that. And you do notice in the assistance, it is not Simon of Cyrene bearing the cross. It is Simon of Cyrene with Jesus bearing the cross all the way to Calvary, to Golgotha. And when he reached that place, Simon does not die on Jesus's behalf. Jesus does the dying. So both scenarios give us what bearing other people's burdens looks like. It's for A, a season, B, for a reason, and C, it is not taking over agency and taking over ability from the individual. It is done in a way that empowers the individual to solve their problems and equips them to live life victoriously thereafter. So the biblical mandate to bear each other's burden still exists, and it is meant to be empowering and not disempowering. And it is not a chance to medicate yourself through helping other people or running other people's problems. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you. And I'm just
Also, if I may.
Oh, just give me a second before this comment disappears. I am echoing Kerubu Amoro's comment. Bearing each other's burdens from a scriptural sense means the bearer is stable, coming from a place of power, love, and a sound mind. I like that. Okay, go ahead. Mukimba, you're on deck.
I wanted to ask something, or rather point towards something. You know, when you talk about black tax, I know a lot of times we've talked about it in the context of finances and resources. I also look at it also from the emotional distress that family members can put their significant other. You know, maybe you are the firstborn or secondborn and your family members keep calling you about emotional things that are happening at home, or you become the problem solver of certain problems at home. For example, your siblings got into a fight at night and you are being called to solve that problem, or your younger sibling has refused to eat and you're being called to solve that problem. Your younger sibling has refused to improve on their studies in school. So you find that in as much as we talk about financial black tax, there's also that element of emotional black tax. You become the solution to every problem. And what happens is that it can start to affect your work, your responsibilities, and your expectations of the family. So I just wanted to add to that concept that in as much as we talk about money, there's also the emotional aspect. And many a times as family members, we hardly discuss this emotional black tax for fear that they'd be looking at us like, oh, so now things are working well for you, you don't want to associate with us anymore, you know, that kind of a thing. The other thing that I wanted to add is the aspect of the types of relationships. I know Jacinta is the expert here, but a lot of times we look at relationships in three ways. You can have healthy relationship. So like going with the comment that has been put there about people coming with power, self-control, self-love, their own identity, they have clear boundaries, and they are relating with each other. So they know when to be dependent to each other and they know when to really detach from each other. So there's that aspect of a healthy relationship. Then you can get an alienated relationship. So with the alienated kind of relationship, you'll find the individuals do not really intersect as much. They may pass each other in the same room, but they do not come together in meaningful ways. They keep distance from each other. So there are times you'll find that there are people who are married, there are family members who are together in the family, but they are really alienated from each other. And then, of course, we have the other type of relationship that we talk about is the enmeshed relationship. A lot of times the individuals in this relationship are stuck with each other. They really have eclipsed each other in terms of the individuation. So for us, we may think that these people are madly in love, but in reality, they could actually be in an enmeshed relationship. So that's I just wanted to add those 2 points that as we reflect upon this, there's that element of the type of relationship the individual is in, and also the emotional black tags. Back to you, Posa.
I'm over here stuck. I need to bring Mukimba so that she doesn't feel like chopped liver over there. Mukimba, you're right. But there's a lot, Jacinta, you'll be next because there's a lot of the chat I need you to address and things that are in my head as usual. But Mukimba, you're our adolescent person. I know we think of all these enmeshments, triangulations, codependency as we as adults, but just talk whatever was in your mind, but address the adolescents.
Okay. Yeah, I think I had a lot to say. So I think the part that maybe would have been helpful is the validation of our human experiences, that everybody wants to be a good girl and a good boy. I think that is just part of our makeup as human beings. We have to fit in society. If we don't fit into society, we don't fit into our families of origin, then we are not taken care of, right? So we'll replay these patterns over and over again, because as children, if you're not a good girl or a good boy and mommy gives you silent treatment, right? You will be afraid that your needs may not get met. So you'll go around and you'll figure out, how can I be this good girl? How can I be this good boy, right? How can I perform so that I receive this love and affection, yeah? Because I need this to survive. And the validation is, even as adults, we do want to be that good spouse. We want to be that good partner. We want to show up and get a badge of approval so that we can feel like we are doing what we were meant to be, right? If your partner tells you, hey, you're a good wife, right? Of course, that feels amazing, yeah? The problem is now when it's on the other end of the spectrum. So I feel that our ability to be codependent, obviously, most of the time shows up in a relationship with somebody who is on the other end of the spectrum, yeah? So when we're coming in, we all want approval, right? We all want our needs to get met. If I've learned to get my needs met by disrespecting everybody else's boundaries, by just surpassing everybody's boundaries and not caring about them, I'll go ahead and I'll have my needs met that way, right? But if I was a good girl and I learned that the way to get my needs met is to make sure that everybody gets to see how much of a good work I'm doing, right? Whether my boundaries are not being respected, but hey, you guys are seeing that I'm really showing up, yeah? Yes, my husband is an alcoholic, but guess what? This is me, I'm self-sacrificing. I'm such a good woman, right? So as long as it just, I feel like it's a game of chance. I know there's a word of attraction, and we do replay our childhood so that we can try and fix some of the things that we didn't get as children. But it's a really bad game of luck that I might just meet the wrong person and that will trigger my codependence, right? I'll find myself begging to be that good girl. And then when I'm not getting anything in return, for some reason, my brain is not like, stop this. You need to call this to attention and stop asking for more so that you can get less of what you're never getting to begin with. But my brain tells me, seek out, do more, right? If yesterday you withstood, silent treatment for hours despite showing up, I don't know how many times, let me try and do like 3 days. Yeah, this is just going to get me more and more and more. So the codependency, we have to validate that every single human being, even each and every one of us here, is probably a recovering codependent and unaware codependent. We are all, just because we all wanted to be good kids. Somewhere deep inside us, we knew the way our needs to be met. We had to show up in the way that was right. We had to be good girls and good boys, right? Sometimes women get the brunt of codependency, but men as well a way I've seen codependency showing up for men is, for example, men who are constantly feeling the need to be insane providers, because if I'm not providing, I know my wife's not going to talk to me, right? I know my kids don't need me. So I'm not even going to show up in the household. All I need to do is just make sure I'm providing. So I'm providing for my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my God knows, every single person. I have to be that provider. Whether I steal, whether I die, whether I do what, that doesn't matter. But I've got to show up. That is the way I fit in this society. And we all need to belong. It's a deep, innate need for all human beings. So codependency, I think, is just a response of our humanity. It is us wanting to show up in this world and get our needs met. Now, the problem comes in when maybe you've had a problematic childhood where that was also in its extreme end, yeah? And then now as an adult, you're trying to replay the same patterns over and over again, hoping that this time around you will get them to love you, right? So maybe your partner reminds you a lot of your dad, who probably you did as much good girl material stuff, it still wasn't sufficient, right? But you're like, if I replay this pattern again and again and again, I might just get that love and affection that I want to get. So I wanted to really validate our codependency it's a human expression. It is us trying our very best to get our space in society so we can get a seat at the table and at least get something. We get a meal at the end of it. So it's an evolutionary response. But the problem, obviously, with every type of mental health issue, it comes in that space where maybe we meet somebody who does a lot more of the taking and none of the giving. And then we're replaying our childhood patterns. the replaying of the childhood patterns is definitely a part I wanted to talk about. And the awareness. Awareness makes such a heavy difference. When Jacinta said that whole thing, because we can't really be cured. Our codependency may never really go away, but catch yourself. As long as you can catch yourself doing the thing that you normally do, when you're having a difficulty saying no, when even you yourself knows you've just pushed it a little too hard, when it's been a minute since you checked in with yourself. So I feel like the answer to codependency is constantly checking in with yourself and being mindful, and definitely a lot of self-awareness. Know where your limitations are, yeah? And again, understand that bottomless pits of needs will never, doesn't matter how much you try and fill in those bottomless pits of needs, they will never be enough. If you are helping family members who are never thankful, it doesn't matter how much more you help them, that may never come to pass. So maybe just making peace and grieving the fact that you can't replay your childhood over and over again, hoping that this time around as an adult, you can fix the results, you can fix the winnings. For the young adults and the adolescents, I think that is, again, that is where that good girl syndrome and that good boy syndrome comes in, yeah? We learn as children that, because we do encourage our children, when they perform well, we can't help it but tell them, good job, right? And all of a sudden, maybe you are having a really tough day, but when your kid does something super amazing and spectacular, of course you light up, right? And those subliminal signals, they just go ahead, and they're our humanity. So the only thing we can hope is, as well at the same time, still validating their experiences as people who are growing up, that they don't feel that everything they do for us is performance-based, yeah? But the love and affection we feel for them is not performance-based. That either way, yes, you might have not done so well in your exams. Yes, you brought that C back home. Yes, you brought that D. I still love you, right? I'm not taking away the love. I'm not taking away the nurture, but often our disappointment, maybe we can also have those conversations around with them, allow them to also understand our human process so that they don't go, because sometimes most of these things we talk about childhood trauma, we think it's got to be something so extreme that, your mother was like, if you don't bring an A, I will stop loving you. You will not get food for a week, but that's rarely ever the case. It's just that subliminal messaging. I saw when I brought an A, my mom was excited, yeah? And that week, she just kept asking me how my day was, everything. Oh, okay, so I want to do more of this. I want to do good girl stuff, right? So when I got a D, it's like, you know, she was not doing the thing she was doing last week. So now I'm learning my lesson. I'm like, so this is what gets me that love and affection. And love and affection feels so amazing. So I want more of that. So I'm going to keep trying to get that even in my adulthood. Yeah. So if I meet somebody who is also doing the whole performance-based thing with me, I just go ahead. I'm replaying a pattern, and I'm hoping this time around, maybe they'll see me for me. Maybe they'll love me for me, right? But often that's never the case. I may never get that. So I guess even for our children, I think letting them see your human process, because we can't help but be performance-based. We do want our children to do well in life. We do want them to do good things. We want them to obey. We want them to be kind. But we also have to help them understand that this is not a condition for my love and affection and my nurture, right? I got you either way, right? Even though you do good girl and good boy performance, I still love you and I still care for you. But at the same time, you know, letting them see your process of maybe that disappointment, that slight disappointment, that change of your mood, because those subliminal messages are what we take around with us, not because we've necessarily all come from backgrounds where we were told you have to continuously perform and perform and perform. It's just that we've got to be honest, even in African culture, you know, you go home with a really nice car, you go to Shags with a really nice car, and, you know, with the 2.5 kids and a pet and all those things going on for you. Hey, all of a sudden you're being treated mheshimiwa. That feels really good, right? So you're going to do more of that. So when your relatives ask you for money, you're like, hey, I don't want to miss out on this love and affection. Yeah. But I think just that catching yourself, because that codependency, let's be honest, it is a part of our humanity. It is a part of us wanting that love and affection. We will want it because it does feel good to be accepted. Yes. So yeah, that was my whole, I think.
That was
stuff.
your spiel. Okay,
Yes.
very nice. So I'm just wondering about this audition that Jacinta mentioned in the chat, and I'm just wondering, from Vyombo za Wageni to number one in class, and you're being praised. Have we just been auditioning all our lives to be codependent? And then talk about what you mean by triangulation. Jacinta, you're up.
Okay, yeah. So I always say that. And what I see the most is we feel the need to constantly audition and perform to be accepted into people's lives, into friendship circles, to be the sister, the brother, the one who does everything for everyone, especially older siblings. Older children tend to really struggle with this because they see themselves as the saviors of their families a lot of times, and they see themselves as family managers. And there's an element of it that is the golden child element. They don't want to lose that. So they will continue to overburden themselves or overgive, overperform, because they don't want to lose that status as a golden child or this golden sibling. In auditioning and performing in relationships can look like, let's say in the dating scene, can look like doing too much too soon, it's to manipulate the other person's perception of you. And that can look like I'm auditioning and performing to you so you can see me as wife material, not to accept me for who I am as Jacinta, but for you to see me as potentially your wife. So how do women audition and perform? We meet someone new, we go out of our way to go cook for them, clean for them, be polite, be what we think they need us to be, so we can be chosen. That is a woman's idea of love bombing. That when we talk about men love bombing us, we love bomb men by this performing and auditioning, right? Auditioning and performing can look like you don't want to be, again, we are human beings. We thrive when we feel connected, when we belong to a tribe. In a friendship circle, that might mean performing for your friends, overgiving to your friends, being the one who does the most within a clique of of friends. So you're the one who tends to do the most, because again, at the core of it, you don't want to be kicked out of the tribe. You don't want to lose connection. You don't want to be, this goes back to years and years and generations. We all want to belong. And when we are not concrete on who we are as human beings, on our worthiness, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. When we are not in congruence with our worthiness, we are going to do everything we can for other people to deem us worthy. So this auditioning and performing is something we do on a consistent basis. And when I'm teaching class, we go back. I mean, we can talk till kingdom come about the symptoms of how this manifests itself until we dig to the core of what causes you to want to set yourself on fire. The way you feel like you can keep other people warm is to set yourself on fire, right? What causes that? Let's dig deeper to figure out the root cause of that. The core wound that we are dealing with. Almost always there's a core wound of rejection, there's a core wound of abandonment, there's a core wound of shame, there's a core wound of abuse, and there's a deep, deep core wound, I am not worthy enough. So until we can peel the layers of the onion and get to the root of it, we will just continue talking about the symptoms, but not really getting to the root cause of what it is that is driving this behavior. Once you build your self-worth, once you build your self-esteem, that's the other thing is codependents have deep issues with their self-worth and their self-esteem. Once we can rebuild that to where you feel, you know what, I'm worthy. I don't have to abandon me to be accepted in anybody's life. I don't have to abandon me to fit into a friendship group. I don't have to abandon me to be a good human being. Once you actually come into congruence with that, you will start seeing that you also know how to meet your needs, and you don't feel like meeting your needs first is any selfish. And you start now connecting with other people and building relationships from a place of wholeness, from a full cup, not depleting yourself, not pouring from an empty cup, but literally bringing yourself, your own needs to the table. And then you start now building what we call interdependent relationships, not codependent relationships, interdependent relationships, where there's reciprocation, there's a flow of give and receive. You hear I use the word receive, not take. Give and receive. And once you start seeing relationships should be such, then you start having healthy friendships, healthy relationships with your parents, healthy relationships with your siblings, healthy romantic relationships, because there's a flow of energy that is give and receive. And you also understand you're both autonomous human beings, and that your needs are important, my needs are important. How can we now come into this container of this relationship where we are both on the journey of growth and elevation without one of us having to feel like they have to reject who they are or abandon themselves so the other person can get their needs met.
Okay. And talking about root cause, and this is to any of the panelists, we know about internal family systems and attachment styles. What's a relationship between those two and codependency? And anyone can take a stab. Jacinta, I know you like the attachments part.
Yes, they are all very much interconnected. Yes, they are very much interconnected. When we talk about codependency and boundaries and attachment styles, they are all very much interconnected. Because when you don't have a healthy attachment style, you're more likely to take on codependency as a coping mechanism. Again, codependency is not a personality disorder. It is not a personality. It is a coping mechanism. It's behavior. It's learned helplessness. So we take it on because we are insecurely attached within ourselves as well. And that, again, coming back into how our blueprint was given to us as children, how we connected with our very, very first caregivers, which would have been mom and dad. So when there was a rupture of that connection and that nurturing of the emotional well-being of a child, that rupture is now the one that feeds attachment hunger, attachment trauma. And so we go into relationships attaching very unhealthily, very insecurely to other people because that bond, healthy bonding way was ruptured in childhood. So all those things, they are all interconnected. And when we are, like in my class, we dissect, like the whole journey of self-love is dissecting that and rebuilding all that within yourself.
Okay, Mukimba and Austin, do you have attachment styles and internal family systems and codependency?
So there was that statement about firstborns, right? And I think that there's, especially firstborn daughters in African households, there tends to be a personality type that just completely develops. Like I saw a trend on Twitter that was like, hashtag, is it, like, are you, a natural born leader, or are you a firstborn daughter, right? Are you super confident and and all those things, or are you a firstborn daughter, right? So there tends to be like that replaying of some of the wounds that we experienced as children. And I really want to also be very clear, because I felt like a lot of people come back and they're like, no, nothing really big happened in my childhood. Nothing extremely traumatic came and kind of made me feel this way, this unworthiness. I really don't know where it's coming from. My folks were nice people. You talk to them right now, they're just super nice, ordinary people, right? We were not abused, we were not starved. So a lot of people there's a huge dissonance with the experience that they had and insecure attachments in our adulthood. But again, I keep saying this need for belonging is such a human necessity. Like Jacinta was saying, when evolution-wise, right? If you want gathering or hunting, kazi yako tu will just sitting somewhere in the corner doing nothing, of course you're going to get kicked out, yeah? There's only enough food for the people who are doing something, yeah? So that need to belong and showing up and doing certain things so that you can receive that love and affection, it was necessary for our survival. So we passed that down to every generation after us. But now it becomes problematic when, like we were saying, you're lighting yourself up so that you can get other people warm. So 100%, we have to just walk around and understand that we're replaying. I got distracted. I was given this sort of like example. I think everyone has watched Lion King, right? And there's that part where Mufasa dies, yeah? And that thing, it is so traumatic. I have no idea why that movie is for kids. It should not be, because that thing is extremely traumatic. If you just shut down the movie at that end, right? You're traumatized for life, to be honest, yeah? But that's what happens to a lot of us. We get to that point where Mufasa has just fallen down and that's it. He's gone. He's dead. Our sense of belonging, our sense of worth, one experience, 2, 3, 4, 5 experiences, they've just made us feel a certain way about ourselves. But because we didn't come back and recuperate and do the whole Hakuna Matata song and, you know, go and defeat Scar, that's the resolving that we need to do as adults. Like, it's not a given that because you're feeling so insecurely attached that now that's you, that's who you will be for the rest of your life. There's that reconciliation of, yes, you get, I came, this is how Mufasa died, my sense of belonging, my sense of worth. I questioned all of it in that part, but I didn't need to shut the movie down at that point. That's not where the story ends. I have to come back and resolve, go back, replay that childhood pattern with yourself in a safe space, yeah? And give yourself that sense of, that's why self-love is very important. Give yourself that sense of, I belong, I am worthy, right? I may, even my oddities and my weirdness, yeah? That is okay. It is how I can experience still the full sense of belonging and worthiness, even though I show up as weirdly and as authentically as I do show up in every day. But I think that resolution of our childhood experiences, that's always been the biggest issues, because most of us, that insecurity comes from that point in the movie. We stop watching and we are like, okay, I'm done. I don't belong. I am not worthy. I don't do all of these things. So I just leave the movie at that part. Yeah. But you've got to finish it, because if you don't finish it, that is probably one of the most traumatic experiences. But we have to understand overgeneralization, a lot of cognitive distortions. It's just how children respond to life on life's terms, right? It's easy, it's quick. Yeah. If mommy did this, they're not going to think mommy is upset because maybe she's having a tough time at work. I'm going to personalize it as a child. I'm going to think, oh, this is because I didn't perform as I was meant to perform, right? It could be financial stresses. And I think instead of parents in this day and age, because I've also seen that being such a huge issue for so many parents, instead of parents feeling like they need to also overperform and be perfect parents and, you know, get all these things right because you don't want to leave your kids with trauma, the issue is not the experiences that they have. They should see you getting those emotional responses to life on life's terms. The problem is, do you have a resolution after? Do you sit down and have a conversation that ends that movie? That Mufasa died, yes, but still Simba becomes king, you get? So I think that part is really important in just like how we are developing as human beings, instead of just rushing and thinking we've got to also overperform, because I feel like also parents these days are overperforming and trying to get every single detail of their children's lives. And that can also be very paralyzing and very stressful. We're humans on a human journey. We will get upset. We will have moments where we are not perfect parents. Let's just walk also very gently with ourselves. And the resolution, that part is what's making a difference, that we sit down, we have conversations, we resolve the story. It doesn't end in that place of trauma. So yeah, that is my take on attachment and the whole thing.
Okay. I read Walala, I think I saw your hand a long time ago. Was it just a wave, or you wanted to ask a question and I forgot you?
No, it was a mistake. Thank you.
Oh.
It was a mistake.
Okay. Austin, I'm really looking for someone who will cover internal family system, because I feel like we need to. Please.
So for me, you know, we learn behaviors in our families. You know, our parents model and teach us certain behaviors and ways of thinking and acting. So a lot of times, if there is codependency in the family, we will learn codependency. So it is a way of learning because of the models that we receive from our parents. Other times also, there are certain behaviors that you'll find are encouraged or discouraged. And depending on the impact that it has on the individual, you'll find as you grow up, you're also passing this type of behaviors to your children. For example, a parent can scold their child for crying. And so the person grows up knowing that crying is not acceptable. Whereas also the parent can praise the child for being responsible, like taking care of your siblings, ensuring that they have been fed or they've taken a bath. So you'll find because of this dynamic, I grow up with that notion that certain behaviors are acceptable and discouraged. Certain behaviors are unacceptable, they are discouraged, and certain behaviors are acceptable, and they have been encouraged to carry on with it. For me, what I also like to look at is that a lot of times when someone, after we do an assessment and we realize that they have elements of codependency in their life, there are certain questions we then ask. What would you want to achieve out of the process? Jacinta had talked about self-love, and for many times, that is the first thing we want to help the individual to achieve. You bring them to focus on themselves. You bring them to take care of themselves more. You want them to be in control of their own lives, and at the same time, for them to be able to express themselves. So you'll find the whole counseling process really will be focused on these four behaviors: focus on self, care of self, controlling their own lives, and expressing themselves. So that's how we try to look at it, whether you've come individually or whether you've come for the process as a family system. But at the end of the day, the family members need to have these features and need to work on these 4 goals for them to be able to make progress. Then, of course, there are certain skills that we try to teach as we want to fulfill these 4 goals. One of those skills is a question that we like to ask the family members to reflect upon when we say, do you hope that things will change? You know, like whether it's in an addiction setting or whether it's just in a codependent relationship setting, you're asking the individual, are you hoping that things will change? Then, have you found yourself accepting unacceptable behaviors? So in the sense that I'm neglecting myself and I'm fulfilling the other person's needs. And then the other question that we also try to reflect upon is the question on, do we believe we are helping when we really are hurting the situation and enabling it to continue? So of course, with these kind of questions, we ask the client to write a journal or to write a life story with trying to respond to this question so that they can be able to now look, am I able to face the illusions that I'm working through? And am I able to come to terms with this concept that, yes, I am in a codependent situation, I'm in a codependent relationship, and there are certain things I need to have a reality about. A reality about myself, a reality about the other person, and a reality about the situation. So of course, with family members and with the family systems, the family really influences how we feel. It teaches how we think. It teaches our experiences with other people. And of course, how we are acting, how we are doing, what they are doing or what they are acting, it's all influenced by our family of origin. A lot of times we are challenged to reflect on our family of origin and say, what functional behaviors have I come with from my family of origin, and what dysfunctional behaviors have also brought into this relationship from my family of origin. So of course, this is one of the skills that we teach. Facing this reality, I'm able to confront this reality that yes, I could be in a dependent relationship. Now, what has happened over time is that changing a behavior or changing a situation, we start to grieve. We experience grief reactions because of the changes that we are making. And so we then also teach the person to reflect on the grief process. You know, like the model from Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, when you talk about denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, again, we start to see, okay, in my codependent relationship, am I in denial about it? In my codependent situation, am I having anger issues related to it? Am I bargaining? Am I feeling depressed about it, or have I come to a level of acceptance? And of course, for many of us, this is what we really want to achieve, that we want to say, I have been able to accept that this is the situation, and this is the thing that I need to be able to work with. So of course, that is one of the first skills that helping the individual to face the illusion. The illusion could be within myself, but the illusion is I have learned it and I've brought it from my family of origin. Back to studio.
My other question, I know we are talking about relation, you know, like either marital or family relationships, but I feel like, especially in our setup, the charmers and the boys, there's a level of codependency. I know I was in one and I had to exit. Like it was that bad. Can someone speak about this, the level of codependency within our charmers and the boys, even for single people? Jacinta, you look very ready. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Austin can speak for the boys, but I think, yeah, you just in charmers you will see this quite a bit, and anytime really you find yourself doing to your own detriment, and to where you feel like overstretched, overwhelmed, giving a little more than you're receiving, that's your clue that you might be operating in codependency. So yeah, you can see this in charmers, where you have one person who is constantly being asked to do more, or who volunteers to do more. I tend to say many of us codependents are professional volunteers. We volunteer a little too much, but again, it is that disconnection from the self, disconnection from your own needs, and this need to have that external acceptance and external validation, and to people please, so that you can feel either worthy, or you can feel like you fit in, or the illusion that you are going to get your needs met that way. So yes, you will see you're not just codependent in one area of your life. If you're codependent, you're just that. You will find even in the workplace, when you go to the job, you're the one with no boundaries in the workplace. You're the one who volunteers to do more than your fair share. You're the one who actually gets dumped on by your colleagues, or their work, right? So you're going to find that you function in this way in almost every area of your life. This is why unlearning this behavior and healing the core wounds that drive it, you find that it improves the way you're experiencing your work, improves your business, the way you're interacting with your clients, improves your romantic relationships, your relationship with your children, family members, every which way. But more importantly, you have more time to yourself, more time to rest, and you just kind of feel like, I call it like losing emotional weight. You feel light once you do this work, and rebuild the self. Because again, what Austin was talking about, and understanding, going through that process, that is the rebuilding of your authentic self. And so once you do that, you find that, first of all, you're able to set boundaries, even in the workplace, even in your charmers, even in your social circles, with your children, everybody else. You're able to set healthy boundaries and raise your standards, and also be free to communicate that, because it doesn't matter what your standards are. If you're not communicating them is useless. It doesn't matter what your boundaries are. A boundary is not a boundary unless it's been communicated, right? So it also gives you that ability to self-advocate, that ability to communicate your needs and the parameters under which you're going to function in relationship with other people, in relations with other people. So yes, all that is important, that the rebuilding of the self-worth and the rebuilding of the authentic self is critical. And it can be overwhelming when we realize that we are codependent. Again, this is so common. This is something that is conditioned in us from a very young age. As you are asking about family structures, we learned to get validation and love from performing at a very young age. I don't know if everybody here is from Kenya, but we grew up where how we performed in school in some homes determined how much love you got, right? If you are number 50 out of 50, chances are either you're going to be scolded, or your mom and dad are not talking to you, or there's some consequence because you didn't perform. Some of us were parentified at a very young age. We started taking care of our younger siblings, especially the older siblings, at a very young age. When you start now expending all your energies outward to take care of others, then you're disconnected from your own needs. When there was no boundaries that are exercised in the family structure, and especially the enmeshed family dynamics, you don't even know where your one person, family member ends and another one begins. That is disconnection from autonomy, sovereignty as a human being, and disconnection from your needs, right? So when we learn that we are codependent, it's not something that we need to beat ourselves up for. It is actually now having that self-awareness so that we know how to start correcting that and rebuild our sense of self. And I'm from somebody said they're from Tanzania, and it's pretty much the same. Yes, I think a lot of children, love is modeled as conditional. We call that conditional love role modeling, where you are validated and loved on only because you are daddy's little girl or mommy's good girl, or because you performed in some way. That's how we learn to audition and perform. Or if we were objectified in some way, we learn that that's how we get our needs met.
Okay, and because Sharon is here, and you're our food person, you don't have to be on camera if you're not camera ready. How is it showing up in our dietary patterns, this codependency? And then after this, I want us to recap what we just need to do to maintain interdependency and to just heal ourselves from codependency and be nice children. Sharon, you're up. You know, you show up, you have to talk.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sharon Ogogo here, health coach with a background in nutrition. So one of the things I've been thinking about, I think, since you shared the poster with me, Posa, is how it shows up. And one of the conversations that I have been finding coming up with my clients is they eat a certain way because that's how they learned. Like, we basically behave the way behavior was modeled to us. So even in eating, there are times when I know I've had almost arguments with clients who say, no, but I think it's genetic that I have this problem because so-and-so in my family has it and so-and-so in my family has it. And I challenge them to think, is it because it's genetic, or is it because they all eat the same way? Like, they have the same behavior and they engage in the same activities, you know? And when I challenge them to ask this, sometimes they're able to go back and do the work and ask that auntie, that cousin, how did you grow up eating? You know, are these the foods that you ate growing up, etc. And it winds up being that, yeah, it's true. A lot of what we blame on genetics is actually learned behavior. That if it was a tradition for us to make French fries at home on Sundays because that was the one day everyone was together, and French fries were the ways that we celebrated just being home together on a Sunday after church maybe, then that's something that I also carried into my own home, because this particular lady had noticed that she just, for some reason, would find herself reaching for potatoes on Sunday after church to make French fries at home, because that's a thing she grew up seeing. So that was normalized behavior. And then now if we spread it out, even with drinking, very many of the clients who come to me saying they have alcohol dependency, at least that's how they name it, where they need to drink to just feel complete, or to feel as if the day can go along, you know, it's, or I need a drink so that I can sleep properly. It's, where did you first experience this? Where did you learn this? Where did you pick this behavior is a question I like to ask. And very many people will tell me, no, I first tasted alcohol because of my dad. You know, he told me, hey, you're a man now, let's have a drink together. Or I stole the alcohol from his cabinet somewhere, or some family member had the alcohol somewhere, so they found it. And so this shows up that way as well. But then also, I think of codependency, just the way it has been described from the beginning, as you don't know where you start and this other person begins. And I know that's also enmeshment. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but yeah, I don't know whether there's that crossover, but there's also that tendency to please and to be the reference point for someone. And so when I deal with people, especially my female clients who are in romantic relationships, very many of them change the way they eat to make their partners happy. So for instance, I very often hear a lady say, I'm not really a huge fan of meat, but because my husband will not eat a meal that doesn't have meat in it, that's how we eat. So I have to make sure, even if I am making my green grams or my beans or whatever, as a good Christian woman, and I'm saying that very sarcastically here, and I'm supposed to be submissive and I'm supposed to be a good wife, I need to make sure there's beef at the table. And so what eventually happens is even the children pick this habit that we have to have meat at the table. And then sometimes when they decide to come and look for me is when maybe one day the meat has delayed or something has happened, and one of the children goes like, but where is the meat? Why is there no meat at the table today? And then this person picks up that it's a problem. So that's essentially how I am seeing codependency showing up. It is in attempting to mirror the habits of the people that we start to relate with. So another funny story, it's funny but not funny, is where I had this one particular client who said that they switch up their diets depending on who they're dating, and they call themselves a serial dater. They say they don't know how to not be in a relationship. And so if she's in, this generation, the millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Xs, we call them situationships. If it is a relationship that is somewhat romantic, yes, Jacinta, you called it love addiction, and that really is what it is. So it depends on who she is with at that time. So you guys don't have a label. She's a workaholic. She is not ready for a real romantic relationship, but she enjoys the fringe benefits of being in a relationship. And she says, so between January and February, if I am with person X, and this is, they order takeout because I spend many weekends with them because that's the only time I'm with them, then we are ordering in. And then I'll probably gain weight at around that time, and maybe we will go to the gym together, we won't. And then when that ends, or they start to become emotionally distant, and I go phase him out, and unfortunately it's a terrible joke, but getting over someone by getting under someone else, she meets someone else who is very different, and this person is a runner, and they're probably vegetarian, and so she quits the meat and the takeout and everything, and then she starts jogging and starts to eat something, and I mean, something different, etc. So that's how it also shows up. So that when you ask this person, but what are some of your favorite foods? What are your personal preferences? They're literally at a loss of words to tell you what they like. Why? They've lived under the shadow of so many people for so long. They have never really taken time to ask what is it that they like and what they want. And sometimes if you trace the questions back, because I've shared this before, I like to ask why, all the way to the nth why that they can think of. They're like, I never really, you hear that there's a lot of sense of, I never really knew what I liked because I was told. In the African setting, children don't have rights. We've had the statement, my house, my rules, you eat what is put in front of you. If you have a problem with it, you can sleep hungry. And so again, you root it back to, I probably never really liked ugali, or I never really liked, matoke, but because it is what was put before us, and we could not question parents as authority figures, then that's what I had to eat. And then, so maybe either that will show itself in adulthood as I never touch this stuff, or I still eat it because I feel this is what is healthy. I mean, it's very confusing. People react differently and respond differently to different things. But it's also just very important to, as I say, always seek help. I'm a big advocate for talk to a therapist, talk to a coach, talk to someone when you notice there's this behavior in your life that is problematic, or you have this itch at the back of your mind that you need to scratch because your eating patterns are changing depending on who you're dating, what you're doing, who you're with, you know, etc. Because the minute you start to notice that your gut feeling is telling you something is wrong, please, please, please talk to someone, talk to a professional. Back to you in studio.
Studio Mtalipa. Okay, thank you very much. So let's recap on and if we can have like 3 or 4 points on what to do so that how am I bulletproofing my child so that they don't meet Obuluta's a son who's codependent, and my daughter is codependent. I just want us to stop these disasters before they start. So what should we do? And we can start. Mukimba, you've been quiet, so let's start with you.
So I'm also with you, like prevention is just, I think it's the better place to start. Resolution is definitely possible, but prevention is better. So I had said this before, that I think also so that we don't start another whole issue, I have noticed culture likes to pendulum on things. So our parents knew nothing, so now we know everything, yeah? And I think that also can be problematic, and it has started being problematic if you see a lot of Gen Zers. I think what's most important is to start with having resolutions and having our humanity presented to our children. I feel that as your children see you also discovering yourself, because you're not done with that journey. It's not going to be done. You probably still be in your 80s discovering you like chicken and you didn't even know you like chicken, and that's okay. But finding a process that your children go through life with you as well allows them to also understand that they will also be discovering things about themselves constantly. And as they learn, they get to pivot and to understand, you know what, last week I did like myself some chicken, but now this week my fave is kaugali, and that's okay, right? But I think allowing our kids to go through the process of life with us will be the best step. Not trying to as well also prevent them from knowing life because you got to know too much of life, yeah? So let them see you handle your emotional regulation in front of them, so that when they have big feelings, they can also understand it's not personal, yeah? Mommy also has these big feelings sometimes, yeah? This is showing them how you cope with life on life stamps. Do you exercise? Do you journal? Do you study the Bible, yeah? Taking them through that whole process with you, I think makes such a huge difference. Parenting is not a clear science, but I do feel it can be made a lot easier if we embrace our humanity and we don't also try to be, now for some insane reason, perfectionists, because that's also creating a whole new set of problems. But the best resolution to allow our children to understand their self-worth, their ability to love themselves, their ability to be aware of themselves, the ability to also pivot through life, because there's no one clear set of answers. There'll be different phases of your life that will require you to also show up in different ways, and allowing them to see that whole process of lifing really makes a huge difference for them, yeah? And also for ourselves, I think we also learn a lot as we're bringing kids up. As well, like I had said before, we are not stuck. We are not insecurely attached. We are not, I guess even for narcissists, I know they say they don't have empathy, but I do feel there is a recovery mode for each and every one of us. I tend to also think codependent people are some version of covert narcissists, because at the end of the day, they are also bottomless pits of need. But because they're socially acceptable and, you know, they're givers. So you can't be bad if you're giving so much, right? But at the end of the day, there is recovery for each and every one of us. Like Sharon said, talk to someone. If this is not working and you haven't figured out how to make it work, talk to somebody, find a resolution, ask somebody. I also like the concept of coaching, because it's somebody who's done exactly what you're asking them. Like you see, Jacinta saying she's a recovering codependent. So she can just sort you out to that whole codependency thing step by step, because that's what she's gone through herself. It's not just some stuff she read in school. She's saying, listen, I had to learn self-love. I had to learn boundaries. I had to learn all these things. So come, let me show you how to do that. Yeah. And I think that really society has also been very helpful. We are able to have access to all this, like things that can really help us. Counselors are very readily available. Coaches are available. Even friends that you see are doing life a bit better than you're doing it. It's okay to ask questions, but there is resolution, and 100% allow your children to see you doing life so that they can also understand how to do life, and not really, I think, also swinging the pendulum on the other end of trying to do everything your folks didn't do, because at the end of the day, I feel like that also can become very problematic. But I guess back to you, boss.
Asante sana. Austin, you're next.
So not to repeat what the others have said, one of the things that we can do to either work on codependency or prevent codependency is the aspect of boundaries. Kenyans like buying plots on land, and normally I ask, what is it that is going to differentiate your land from your neighbor's land? You'll find you have beacons, and one of the things that we say is that good fences make good neighbors. So when you put a good fence, you and your neighbor are not going to have conflict that I'm encroaching on their land or they're encroaching on my land. My chicken is running there to eat their beans, or their cow is coming to my land to eat the maize. So for me, that's the first thing that we try to learn in terms of dealing with codependency, setting boundaries, teaching the child or teaching the family member to be able to set healthy boundaries. A lot of times it's about clarifying for themselves what they can and what they cannot do, clarifying the limits that they have in different situations, clarifying responsibility. It could be about clarifying issues to do with emotions or finances or even the relationship itself. So for me, that's how I like to look at it in terms of one of the things that we like to do. Our children, they need to learn about boundaries and limits. And so even adults also, as adults also, we learn about boundaries and limits. Having boundaries is usually a healthy thing. It doesn't mean that you don't love the other person, but it means that you love the other person to know about their own identities and self, and also to respect your own identity and self. Boundaries also help us to set parameters of our relationships and our interactions. And at times you find you can learn boundaries from small things. I remember growing up one time, we used to come to the house anytime we wanted, and my mom was getting tired of putting food for everyone in the oven for it to keep warm. So one time she decided to set a boundary. 9 o'clock is dinner time. 8 o'clock was the limit as to when you would inform her if you're going to come late. And if you come after 9 o'clock, you'll be lucky, and you didn't say anything, you'll not have been put in the count of the food. The first day of implementing this rule, some people came late, including my dad. And when they came late, the only food that they found was either dry food in the store or cold food that is in the freezer. All the other cooked food had been finished and the pots had been cleaned. Of course, we learned about that there are certain times you find you have to put limits with yourself, because for her, she was getting tired of fulfilling everyone's needs around supper time. And she was listening to herself and she was like, this is not healthy for me. And so I need to start setting a limit. So of course, for us to be able to do this, one is to listen to yourself, and two is to focus on how you're interacting with the other person. And a lot of times, as you listen to yourself and as you focus on the interaction, you'll be able to identify that there are certain things that maybe you need to set a limit for. There are certain things that maybe are acceptable or unacceptable, either for yourself or for the relationship. So this is something that we keep teaching in counseling. You'll also find out maybe also in self-help groups. You'll also find that this is something that they teach in self-help groups, that you can you be able to have physical limits, emotional limits, also spiritual limits, because also sometimes as we relate with other people, you realize that we have different spiritual practices and beliefs. And so also there are certain times you need to put limits around those areas. So that's how I like to look at in terms of preventing or dealing with the boundaries. I mean, dealing with the codependency.
Okay, Jacinta, you are up.
Yeah, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been such an amazing session. I wanted to say that I think counseling, therapy, coaching are things that we need to normalize because just the topic of codependency alone is deep. It is something that can be unlearned, but it can't be unlearned in a single session like this. It is something that you commit to unlearning. And the same way we commit to going to get master's degrees, PhDs, that next certification is the same way I think we need to normalize PhDs and master's degree in self-mastery and in reconnecting with our authentic selves. And that is a process, and one that it doesn't take that long as you're willing to do the work. Because when you do this work, you start living your life not only in an authentic way, but also in a way that is easy to live. There's harmony within you. You have inner harmony. When you have inner harmony, you have harmony with other people, with the world, right? As far as our children are concerned, our children don't learn from what we tell them. Mm-hmm. They learn from what we model. So I get asked, how, Jacinta, I have a teenage daughter, teenage son, can you coach them? Or how do I coach them? And I say, the first thing you have to realize is for you to parent effectively, the first person you have to learn to do is to parent. The first thing you need to learn to do is parent yourself. Once you do this reparenting, because this work is really reparenting the self. Please don't go call your mom and dad and tell them you're reparenting yourself because you're going to be triggering them. It's like you're telling them they did an awful job. No, that's not what I'm asking you to do. The reparenting is like nurturing our self, the inner little girl, little boy inside of us that is wounded, that is love addicted or addicted to other people because she's looking to, he or she is looking to get their needs met. Once you, he or she is also the part of ourselves that runs our emotional show. That's one that gets really triggered, reacts to everything. So this whole reparenting work can be done in therapy, can be done in counseling, in coaching, and that also helps you show up in a certain way, and your children observe that, and so that is what you're modeling to them as a way of being. The other thing we need to do is, and I'm not here to ask you to be a certain type of a parent or not, helicopter, consultant, dictator, all that. I'm saying we need to normalize allowing our children to speak up. our children are not part of our identity. They are not an extension of our ego. They are not our properties, right? The thing about it is every human being, whether that's your husband, wife, child, son, daughter, each and every one of us is a sovereign being. We are individuals. When we don't allow our children to speak up, we are suppressing a part of them that is their authentic self, and we are teaching them that their voice doesn't matter. We are invalidating their voice. And in doing so, we are creating adults who cannot speak up for themselves, or who feel like they have to go and perform an audition to get their needs met, or to be seen, heard, and understood and validated. So our children need to be able to speak up. It also builds their self-confidence. It builds their ability to trust themselves. That's that intuitive voice, right? And it also allows them to know that who they are is good enough. I can speak up without being told, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a child, you need to be seen and not heard, all that stuff that children learn in childhood. And then to echo what Austin said, I don't think we can overemphasize the need for us to understand boundaries, healthy boundaries. What are they? How do you exercise them? Why you have to be consistently setting boundaries and respecting other people's boundaries, right? It's because, again, that's the parameters. I always say, you know how you go to a nightclub when we used to be young, and we would be freezing, wearing short dresses, waiting to get into the nightclub, and we are freezing over there, and there's a dude over there wearing a black tight t-shirt with biceps coming out, and he's over there like waiting to see if you have your ID or if you're of age. Boundaries are that is your bouncer. That is the thing, the person that determines what you're letting in, or who you're letting in into your secret space, or into your life and your experience of life. So we need to normalize boundaries, whether those are spiritual boundaries, physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, money boundaries, social boundaries. There's all kinds of boundaries. And again, this is how we start unlearning some of this behavior, and even those of us who are like Dr. Austin and Mukiba, if you ask us, some of us are recovering codependence, and I always say I used to be that woman who would be making 100 samosas because somebody called me the day before and they needed 100 samosas, and I'm driving across town to go look for minced goat, so I can make them spicy samosas and mild samosas, and I'm not getting paid for it because I was so terrified to say no. And I also realized that I was trying to audition to stay in friendships, and I felt like I had to do all of that for people to be my friends. I can't tell you how many times I have violated my family members' boundaries by when my savior rescuer codependent started dictating who goes to what school. I'm paying for it. I'm deciding I'm taking you to this university and starting this business for you because I'm your older sister. I know what's best for you, right? And I had several breakdowns from all the overwhelm, and I had literally a mental breakdown. And this was all driven by when one of my siblings, after I had put her through private university in Kenya, asked me, who asked you to do all this? And I was shattered. Who asked you? But it was the best question that was ever asked to me, the best thing that was ever done to me, because I learned that in this codependency and prescribing to people who they should be, I was also severely violating their boundaries and inhibiting their ability to grow into their authentic selves. So this is deep work, but it is work that needs to be done, and one that also improves all your relationships. I'm happy to report all those people, I now have very healthy relationships with them, but I don't stomp on their boundaries, neither do I set myself on fire for them. So I let people experience their life in their own authentic way. If they ask for my opinion or help, I will be there, but I don't come and become people's savior anymore. Thank you.
I am Posa, and I'm trying to recover from codependency. You've just described. Yeah, and I think for we chief Black taxpayers, the question of consent is very key, because we decide, we are like, you'll marry so and so because I'm paying it. You'll marry so and so, the venue will be here. You go to this school. Your child will wear this. Yeah, we need a deep conversation. You feel stabbed in the heart. Thank you for stabbing me in the heart, but it's important. And I've learned, like I say, I have learned much more on these conversations than I did in, I'm saying Keruba, so cover your ears, than I did in medical school and dental school at the University of Nairobi. This has been eye-opening. Any questions? Any of the participants, do you have any question that is lingering? We try to cover these topics as thoroughly as we can, because this is we are giving back to our people. Maswali kwa wananchi? No, yes. I don't bite. I'm recovering codependent.
I think we all feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, feel free
Don't
to raise
feel
your hand. Yeah, or type the question. But anyway, Sarah is back in time. And since you're a pastor, you need to just do a pastor spiel on codependency that you may have discovered in your own journey. Miriam, you're
said she's
confused.
confused.
Can we remove the confusion? And Miriam, because you're who's the Tanzanian? Joanne is not here. You can speak in Swahili. Tutajaribu. Miriam, we can. Do you want us to help? Okay, Miriam, can we help you in your confusion? Where are you confused?
I don't know if she's typing or unmuting.
Okay, you can unmute and ask. You can type and ask. We don't bite. This is not 844. This is not high school. No one will beat you up. Okay, go ahead.
My confusion on codependency. I'm wondering on a situation, especially in a relationship, in this case, a marriage, where of course I find as a wife, I find myself overgiving, and also I find my husband overgiving to us. Is that interdependence or codependence?
What do you mean you find yourself overgiving and your husband overgiving to you guys? Are you describing a relationship that is interdependent, or where you're giving and the other person is giving? What do you mean? Can you elaborate overgiving, what that looks like? And let me,
like you said, like you said about codependency is a situation whereby you'll find yourself, is it selfless, where you'll sacrifice your all. You'd rather not meet your needs first, but meet
yes, that is codependency. When you're talking that, yes.
Yeah, so I do that, and I find my husband doing that to me and the children a lot. So how do you explain that? That's why I say that I'm confused.
That's a question that I literally would need to ask you a lot of follow-up questions and also understand yours dynamic. Because giving to your family is not codependency. Your husband giving to his family is not codependency, unless each one of your needs are not being met. So in codependency, it tends to be very one way. So in a romantic relationship, let me read my notes here. Codependency in a relationship would look like one person takes the role of the giver and makes excessive sacrifices for the other partner. a codependent would have his history of having a pattern of relationships with addicts and functioning partners who are not able to stand on their own. They are regularly trying to rescue troubled partners, or the partners who have really not matured in their they are emotionally, mentally not mature, relationships that lack boundaries. So there's a lot of controlling, there's a lot of snooping, there's a lot of violation of each other's personal privacy. There's going above and beyond to make a partner happy, even when they haven't earned it. There is, in a new relationship, being prematurely attached to new people you just meet, or continuing to over-sacrifice, over-give, save, rescue, hoping at some point your actions and your sacrifices will inspire the other person to change.
Okay.
Abandoning your own self-care, but then you also feel deeply resentful afterwards because your needs are not being met, and you keep reminding the other partner how much you have sacrificed for them. Especially active codependents are notorious for this. They nag, they lecture, they tantrum, they remind the other person how much they have loved this person more than they love themselves, and how much they have self-sacrificed, not ending relationships even when the inequities innate screaming at you, and they are glaring at you, and then you and putting up with the consequent suffering that comes with that, or staying in abusive relationships or trauma-bonded relationships, or sometimes using sex to optimize the chance of connection, or confusing sex for real intimacy. So codependency in an intimate relationship is deep, and it shows up in certain ways. But at the core of it is people's need. You're overgiving and your needs are not being met, and then not having the tools to communicate what your needs are, and not even understanding that your own needs are important within the relationship. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
If I may add, so there are certain things maybe we might ask and looking at the behaviors from a continuum on what is okay and what is considered to be going too far that makes it codependent. So for instance, I may ask you to look, are you offering within your resources, or are you offering outside of your resources? So in as much as all of you are saying we are giving and fixing and caretaking, is it within your resources or outside of your resources? So in terms of your resources, maybe within your time, within your energy, within your money, you know, that kind of a thing. And then the other question that sometimes we ask is, as you receive this person's offer, are you accepting it, or are they forcing you to accept it? Because the forcing part now is codependent, whereas when you are accepting willingly, it is okay. It is not codependent. Then the other one is about suggestions. For example, do you make a suggestion and you leave them alone, or do you insist upon your suggestion and you actually want them to carry out that suggestion that you've given? So again, if you insist on your suggestion, you're moving towards codependency. So of course, if you are to get professional help, you might find maybe the therapist or your coach will give you certain exercises for you to reflect upon, and based on those exercises, you'll be able now to say, okay, I think on this aspect of my behavior, this is leading towards codependency, and on this other aspect, this is what is considered to be okay.
Okay.
I hope those answers help you.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yes.
I think it's more of interdependent. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Kerubo, do you want to clarify your question, or have the panelists understood? How long can you both keep it up? Or are you asking Miriam? Kerubo, do you want to unmute and ask your question? Or you're asking Miriam? Okay. I think she's okay. Miriam has understood herself the last 2 seconds I had, right? Miriam, si uko sawa?
Ako sawa, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
pastors.
niko sawa.
Okay.
Niko sawa. I can relate it to more of interdependence, even though I can see a very little trace of codependence.
80%, tuliambiwa 80% of us. Me naona it's even more. 80. Just killed us with that statistic. 80%. Niko hapa tu, nimemaka. Saya, are you still here? I can't see you. Saya, jitokeze. Do your pastoral duties and close the meeting.
Which pastoral duty do I still need to do?
I don't know. I feel like you know, the way we spiritually bypass, as in we just say ni Mungu for all these things. I just want you to emphasize that Christianity doesn't call for us to be codependent. I want you to reiterate that. And then, yes, I'm very serious. And then
as my codependent sister has said, yes.
I am recovering. I didn't say I have recovered. Recovering, yes.
As before he starts, maybe the question that I would ask him, maybe from the point of view of spirituality.
Okay.
You know, there are two concepts that spiritual scholars will talk about: openings to spirituality and beyond the openings. I know for us, in counseling, a lot of times most therapists don't talk about spirituality with their clients, but then there are certain things that we teach the clients that help them to embrace these two concepts. For example, we talk about a relationship with a higher power and how the higher power can influence your relationships. The other thing that we also talk about is letting go of things you cannot control, and then how also this influences your relationships. And then asking the person to practice these two things, having a relationship with their higher power and also letting go of things that they cannot control. So as you talk about spirituality, I don't know if you can just add something on that.
Wait,
Okay.
let me, Jacinta, sorry, and Mukimba, do you have any other spiritual question? And if anyone has a spiritual question, our fake pastor here, Sai is gonna tell us about it. I'm recovering, I haven't recovered.
Sorry, what was your question, Pastor?
No, I'm just asking if there's a religious angle you'd want to be tackled on codependency. Sai, who's our evangelist, I've corrected myself, will try and answer.
Yeah, for me, the religious angle that I've seen is when we talk about being selfless, or it's better to give than to receive. That is actually something we learn in religion, and it's also plays quite a bit in the background in our subconscious with the being overly codependent or overgiving or overstretching ourselves. So I have seen that to be when we are talking in class and we are unearthing the root causes of it is these religious teachings about it's better to give than to receive. It is better to be selfless. And really, if we were to look at the word selfless, that means selfless, no self, right? It is minimizing the self, right? So I like to use the idea that it's okay to push ourselves to be self-actualized instead of selfless, because then we are able to give authentically, we are able to be in balance, and we are able to give and receive, whether it's giving of our resources, giving support and receiving support. One of my kids the other day was having an issue at school, and she was being bullied by a kid. And in talking, she was very hesitant to get to the bottom of, for us to speak to the school and get to the bottom of this and have this resolved. And we were sitting in the car, and I asked her, why are you so hesitant to solve this issue, for us to resolve this issue? And it's obviously causing you a lot of anxiety and even mental health issues at this point. And she said something about, I just don't know how to go about it, because of I was told when people do bad things to you, turn the other cheek. And I literally was like, okay, so I really need to sit with this and figure out how to answer her from the context of that is you abandoning yourself and putting yourself in emotional and mental unsafety because you're holding on to that teaching. And I think it took me like 5 minutes of silence to be able to handle that for that answer and figure out the best way to answer that. So Saya, I'm done.
So when I'll speak from a Christian worldview, and reason here is not because I want to proselytize, but it is because, at least on the issue, on some issues like pain, suffering, codependency, the various religious propositions have are totally different. Okay, so it's not going to be a class on the difference between religions. So Jesus says, when asked what's the greatest commandment, he gives an antidote that would be great to think about for codependency. He says, you shall love the Lord your God. You shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. And then he says, on this hangs all the laws and the commandment. So in the first commandment of the great commandment is love for neighbor, but there's a boundary that is set there. It says, shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. So when you think about it in English and mathematical terms, it says, it does not say you shall love your neighbor and forget yourself. It says you shall love your neighbor as you forget, as you love yourself. So in English sense, it means loving yourself needs to be a continuous thing, and it becomes the A, the basis, and B, the template upon which you will love your neighbor. So properly understood, therefore, there is a domain within proper spirituality that has the healthy concern for oneself, the drive, the ambition, the goals that you need to do for yourself, okay? And then secondly, there is genuine concern. There's room for genuine, legitimate concern networks, touch points with others. And the framing of the Great Commandment seems to suggest that you can only effectively love others when you A, effectively love and accept yourself, and B, only to the extent that you love and understand yourself. Only when you're functioning from a healthy point are you able to do others, to do to others. And then the second commandment, the one about loving the Lord your God with your all, speaks to the need for a transcendent it helps an individual to therefore look to it solves issues like meaning, it solves issues like hope, a hope that is outside oneself, a a sense of higher being and higher purpose, a belief in the transcendent gives meaning to an individual's life. So if properly and balancedly understood, those three dimensions, the vertical of loving God, the horizontal of loving your neighbor, and the length, the width of life about reaching yourself is needed for an individual to be healthy. When any of these dimensions is out of step, the building that is a human life, spiritually speaking, will be imbalanced. A way to think about it is like three-legged stool. If any of those legs is shorter, the stool could still stand, but it'll be more reliant on the other two existing legs. If the short leg is too short, the stool could end up toppling over. All of that almost feels, this is Sunday, almost feels like it's a sermon. All of that to say that, one, good theology is important in building proper self-dependence. On this, I must speak to two things. One is a theology of an angry God is good raw material for creating narcissistic and codependent people. But it is a wrong theology. It's a misunderstanding of what the anger of God really means. God is not, when you read the Bible cover to cover, God is not angry at you, okay? He's actually angry about you. To mean, the proper theology means God has created these boundaries of safety, of abundance, within which you can be able to thrive. And when you operate outside of those boundaries, and the boundaries are not punitive. The boundaries are best described when you read like the 10 Commandments. It says, for instance, when you go seeking things that are not yours, thou shalt not covet. When you make it the objective of your life to seek your meaning and fulfillment in life by coveting others, people, things, you will be placing yourself outside of God's environment. And when you do so, you will experience injury, or what we come to loosely call the anger of God. And so when you objectively look at it, you realize, no, when God is returning us to his boundaries, he's putting us to operate within boundaries that actually act in our interest. However, certain individuals, parents, when they're seeking to enforce behavior, some preachers, when they're seeking to manipulate either giving or attendance, rely on a twisted view about God's anger to try and keep people in check or to elicit compliant behavior. But the end result is people who are traumatized by religion, which, if properly done, which is rather a misuse of religion, because if properly taught, religion is actually a very liberating thing. In the words of Christ himself, he said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. So one misuse angle within theology and religion is the concept of the anger of God. And then two is the, just before I move away from the anger of God, this is again used a lot on children, okay? Children are reminded, children, obey your parents in the Lord, honor your father and mother that it may be well with you. People forget to remind the parents the other side, which says, and parents don't provoke your children. So a lot of children look very, are undergoing trauma and adverse childhood experiences. Their needs are being ignored, and it is being stamped by a form of religion, which at the end of the day makes it wrong. Now, this is almost, it'll come across defensive, but I need to say this at this point. Individuals have loaded pickup trucks with bombs and driven it into buildings or into crowds, but I have never seen people thereafter saying pickups are evil. You know, pickups should be banned. You know, they kill people, because people are quickly able to realize, wait, that's a misuse of the pickup. Okay, so similarly, individuals have taken this pickup called theology and loaded their own agenda and driven it into families, driven it into churches, driven it into, and as a result, it's done harm. You know, that's something we need to accept. But that's not the way true theology is. That's not true religion. It's an abuse of it. When properly redeemed and used properly, a religion of grace, which really is, grace is unmerited favor. It's a God who is not heavy on performance. He does not accept us on the basis of performance, but rather he accepts us on the basis of who he is. He's created us for community. He's created us for communion with him. When we understand that, and that we cannot earn our way, work our way, guilt trip our way, sacrifice our way to that acceptance, but that he earned it on our behalf, it changes completely the way we interact, first with God, two with ourselves, and three then with each other. A second component of faith that is often then misused is the whole idea of hell. Okay, hell, the judgment, it's basically called the doctrine of judgment. Now, the misused version of it is, hey, if you do this, if you don't do this, God is going to ban you forever and ever. So first of all, when you read scripture, like the Bible cover to cover, the concept of hell is not a perpetual burning place. That is not biblical. And then secondly, even I would hate a God who has to ban people forever and ever. What, however, God is speaking to in the proper idea of judgment is accountability. He portrays himself as a God who says, like, don't take revenge in your own hands, because I'll hold those guys accountable. Be careful what you do with your body, with your time to others, because I'll hold you accountable. Now, all of us, at some point, especially when on the disadvantaged side, we love the concept of people being held to account, okay? People being brought to account. But when we misuse or misconstrue that to say, like, hey, this God is going to be punitive if you don't do what I'm saying, as a child, you will be banned forever and ever, it creates a picture that is very traumatizing. It can easily become the basis for compliance and behavior that is right, but it is not a healthy sort of compliance. So we need to also reclaim and remind people that, hey, God, in his whole concept of judgment, is simply calling people to account. And that's not a bad thing. That's a proper thing. It's a thing we need to do in every facet of life. So all up to that point, I've said bad theology can produce codependence, but a proper use of theology can be able to produce healthy, well-rounded, properly grounded people. Then the other side to spirituality. So spirituality can be both, if misuse, can be a cause of codependence, but if properly leveraged, can be an extremely important and powerful aid to healing. Tools and concepts like grace, tools and concepts like forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving your past, forgiving others, and especially forgiving people who are either not there or who are not remorseful. But then again, here is balance. People confuse two things. A biblical concept, for instance, of forgiveness is not synonymous with trust. Okay. I can forgive, but I'm not compelled to trust. The Bible commands me to forgive, but then the Bible does not command me to thereafter trust. So if someone is messing with my mental health, I'm perfectly within biblical mandate and perfectly within biblical capability and by the grace of God to forgive, but I'm not thereafter required to then trust. If I gave Austin $10,000 and he did not pay, I could choose to forgive him, but then I'm not then thereafter required to A, be a business partner with him, B, give him money forward in the future. Therefore, people who've misconstrued, for instance, brilliant articles from the Bible, like forgiveness, to then have meant it to mean trust, then misuse important tools that would be important in helping us overcome the whole challenges we're addressing today. I like the example given of turn your cheek. Those words were said by Jesus, and you want to see him in action. And two places. One is when he walks into the temple and he finds people selling. He doesn't bring in more goods to be sold. He drives people out. Okay. And there's something about how he must have done it, because as soon as he drives the people out, little children come to him, okay? I don't know how he did it, but one thing I do know is whichever way he did it, he must have had a demeanor or something that attracts children to him. And then a second point is when he is undergoing trial on Easter, early Easter Friday morning, when he's undergoing trial and he's hit in the face, he actually asks, why have you hit me? He doesn't just needlessly turn the other cheek. He asks, like, why have you hit me? So there is a space within Christianity that has healthy room for confrontation, that has the humble, you ask and you ask humbly, and you ask very powerful and very deep questions, and the need to draw boundaries. And then finally, on the issue of religion, you need to one of the ways to get the mind of God in understanding his idea of thriving is just look at how he does creation. You may debate about whether it's literal or figurative, but you're still caught by some very beautiful things when you read Genesis 1. You realize Genesis, the 6 days of creation, Sabbath was created on seventh as a rest day, but the 6 days of creation can be divided into two. The first 3 days was just generally to create environments. And then the next set of 3 days was to create beings or things to thrive within those environments. So you have a sky that is created, you have seas that are created, you have land that is created, and then only thereafter is when you have stars that are created, and you have moon and sun and animals in whichever order, sea animals, land animals in that order. And you notice this is a God who therefore values boundaries. He creates boundaries for a day, so there was no never-ending day. It wasn't like day 1 to day 7 was one continuous day. Days were created distinctly and intentionally. And then boundaries were created. He says, let there be a firmament to make space between this and the other. So the whole idea of separation of things and the whole idea of creating distinct boundaries is not alien to Scripture. In fact, right there from the start of the Scripture itself, it almost seems to portend to the idea that in order for beings to thrive, human and animals and plants to thrive, boundaries were needed. There was an interdependence that was put right from the get-go. The plants were watered by the rain, and the rain got its water from the rivers. There was an interdependence created, but every single thing had a healthy independence. So it was only as they were independent and unique individuals, you realize God didn't just say, in creating in Genesis 1, he didn't just say, let there be things. He gave them very distinct things. He said, let there be a land, let there be sea, let there be a sky, let there be sun, let there be stars. And then when he was making man, he said, let there be man. And then later on, let there be woman, through the act of creation. So this God honors, when you read Genesis 1 very clearly, he honors boundaries, he honors individuality, he honors independence, and then he honors interdependence. So to then later on come and teach in codependence is not biblical. It is not in God's order. It is not in God's pattern. Later on, when poverty and problems came as a result of sin in the text of Scripture, God did provide for ways through which the poor could be cared for. It included charity, it included rules on how to manage the farmlands, it included having very interesting laws about debt and debt relief. It included how farms could be reaped so that margin could be left for the poor. But in all the arrangements that God created, it was never to create perpetual dependency. So if you were a slave, you could be released in the 7th year. And after that, you're given back your land and everything so that you can flourish on your own. If you're poor and you didn't have food, the farms were harvested, but the margins of the farm were not harvested so that you could have food and you could be able to then go on and work. It was never to create a codependency. It was ownership was honored, independence was honored, but interdependence was valued and created. To depart from that is to dishonor Scripture. It's to read human frailty, human agenda into Scripture. But I still believe the Bible, for instance, well leveraged, is a book of beauty and has been shown to be a powerful both tool in therapy and just for general living. Yeah, and tuma sadaka kwa namba ya M-Pesa inayopita hapo mbele ya screen yako. I feel like I've done a sermon. Anyway, jokes aside, thank you for the session. Very, very engaging. And I think it has brought back many other topics that need to be done. So thank you, every single expert who's been over here. And thank you for the questions, both online and on the platform. We appreciate deeply. I think a codependency is something you're either going through or come from, or you know somebody who's going through, and I trust you may be able to overcome. I also realize that heavily it is one of the things that is at the heart of many other struggles people are having with divorce and splitting up and being stuck in life. And so I pray that you may be able to gain the courage to seek for the help that you need. All of our experts are available. I'm sure if you reach out to us, we'll be able to point you to whichever one of them you need to have a chat with. Get the help you need. Heal, so that you don't be the reason that other people don't heal. Stop your bleeding so that you don't go bleeding on other people. Get your spine, have to lean on others, and grant your identity so that you don't have to go deriving it from other people. The conversations continue. In April, I needed to remember what we are discussing in April. Pastor, what is April about?
April, we have one topic because we are unavailable. April is busy. So we have parentification on there. I think 16th, the Sunday, that's 16th or 15th or 17th.
It is the 16th. The 16th of April, we'll be speaking about parentification. You almost realize it's a subset of codependence. So if you're a parent, you want to be there because you want to see, are you parentifying your children? And if you're a child or whichever stage you are, you want to see if you've been parentified and remedy that accordingly. I know after April, we'll be transitioning into May. May is dedicated to sex. We are looking for, so far we are calling it Ngono May. So yeah, just begin preparing. We'll be speaking about these very candid topics. Outside of that, I think we need to enjoy our time ahead. Happy Easter for those coming up. Please, yeah, look out for the channel, Jackson Sire. There'll be very interesting things coming up this Easter, talking about brokenness, bouncing back. So that's why today I was allowed to have a different background. Be on the lookout, share, like, subscribe to the channel, and look out for stuff that will be coming in that direction. Also, follow us on our other various handles, at Authentic Dialogues and at Authentic Dialogues with Sir Jackson on FB. Kando na hayo, yote tisa ya kumi. Thank you, God bless you, and see you next time. Over to you, Posa.
We